So earlier today, when we got to the studio, I was so nervous because I thought Randall was leaving Peabody TV.
I also had that moment today where I was like, oh, congratulations. Wait, does this mean that she's not going to be producing our podcast anymore?
No, literally, I almost shit myself. I was like, Randall.
We had a good run.
Yeah, honestly, for those of you who don't know, Randall produces this show for us and edits fucking everything. So shout out to you, Randall. We love you.
We love Randall
producing,
keeping all of the technology running. So all we can do is yap.
Honestly, that brief moment of panic earlier today, I was like getting ready to. I was like, fuck, we're going to have to talk about this today. I'm going to come in and be like, okay, the new producer, you know.
Wait, so did you get confirmation that is not true?
I did get did you not know? No, I have confirmation that that's not true. Randall is not leaving.
Yeah, I thought maybe.
Oh my goodness.
I would know. I would have heard personally. I trust Randall to shoot me a little text.
Oh yeah, same.
Or a little emoji
same.
my way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hearing relatively bad news on social media is like the worst way to find out about shit.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
What's the worst news you found out on social media?
Oh, Darth Vader dying.
Darth Vader. Oh, James Earl Jones.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones, yes.
I was like, wait, he's dead? But I knew he was dead. I was just thinking like the character. I thought that was a while ago.
Yeah.
That's the worst news you've heard on social media?
That I could think of in recent memory.
Oh, okay. I was like, what about Betty White?
That was also horrible.
Prince?
That was horrible.
Bowie?
Yep, all of them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess every celebrity.
2016 where they all just died at once.
Well, I mean, I guess every celebrity you sort of hear on social media because their family isn't exactly going to call you up personally. So,
do you listen to MF Doom at all?
No, I do not.
So he was a rapper who always had a mask on stage, and there was always all this speculation of like, who is he? And then he ended up passing away, and like his identity was like so well maintained that like months after he died, his family like had the opportunity to grieve and then make a statement to be like, oh yeah, he's dead.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, which R.I.P. because
I
love his music.
Rest in peace.
You know. Well, it was just one of those, it's like, oh yeah, he's dead. And we're like, oh my God, he just died. And they're like, no, it turns out he died like months ago. And I was like, well, good for them for getting that privacy.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, losing someone is definitely tough. So yeah, you know what? I kind of want the same thing now. Maybe I'll put that in my
privacy.
will. Yeah. Don't tell anyone I'm dead until like 3 years later. Let them figure it out.
I'm very much that vibe. I was in the hospital like back in the winter and like I'm fine. But I was there for a few days and like I didn't really tell anyone until I had to because I was like, no one needs to know.
No one needs to know. Yeah.
I don't want to worry anyone. And I'm fine.
Oh
I'm
my
living.
goodness.
I made it to the gig. Welcome back to the first ever crossover episode of Buster's Beat, the podcast where I sit down with other queer artists and entertainers and talk about life, the universe, and anything and everything. Today, very special first time ever crossover episode with the one and only Bossy Boots.
Well, wouldn't that be funny if it was actually your podcast? Because this is my podcast, bitch.
What?
Hello, chicken. My name is Bossy Boots, and for real, welcome to the Chicken Coop, your backstage pass into the ever-changing world of drag production. Someone better call Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan because it is fucking Freaky Friday up in here. Today's special guest is a well-known drag king from Salem, Massachusetts, the producer extraordinaire of the drag king and thing Fling, and the creator of Buster's Beat, also produced right here by the amazing Peabody TV. Please welcome Buster Pants.
Hello.
Hello.
Wait, so this is your podcast?
I guess.
Here's how I know I'm on your podcast instead of you being on mine, because you're sitting over there.
Yeah.
And I'm in drag.
I know, honestly.
That was me being submissive to you, of being like, well, yeah, I'll sit over here and be in drag because I'm a gentleman, you know?
I love a gentleman.
I'm a gentleman. I
do.
defer to the lady, you know?
Oh my God, that's so funny. But seriously, all jokes aside, tell us about yourself. Who is Buster Beat? I'm sure whoever is watching my podcast is probably watching yours too. I hope. Go watch Buster's Beat. But,
well, I was actually thinking this is a great crossover because you and I have worked together and we probably have a lot of people in common, but we probably have a ton of people that we don't have in common because I'm up here so often and you're in Boston and Lowell. So I think this is a good like crossing of the streams where we'll get a little get some new people from your way over my way. And
Crossing streams.
yeah, across the streams.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But seriously, tell us about Buster Pants. What is Buster doing?
Buster Pants. Buster Pants is a cheeky, toxic 90s boyfriend. Like you can smell the Axe body spray through the podcast. I like to think of myself as someone who's like appropriating the patriarchy for my own uses.
Absolutely.
So I always, bust pants, break hearts, stay toxic, awakening sexualities, being problematic, but like for the gay agenda.
For the gay agenda.
For
the gay agenda. Yeah, you see that? Oh my goodness. But obviously, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You also produce a podcast, which is part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you today.
TV.
Yes. But what inspired you to create Buster's Beat? Like when you sat down and you're like, I would love to talk about this. Like, what was the concept behind you creating the podcast?
It was Randall.
Oh, really? It was Randall.
Yeah, Randall.
Randall egged you on.
Randall egged me on. So I actually was in a show a few months ago where like the show itself was good, but like my track wasn't sound checked. So like half of it wasn't coming through the speakers and like I was having a terrible time and I was in a grumpy mood and that was the one number I did and like
drag
to close out the show. So I was there all night and that was just terrible.
Happens.
And Randall came up to me and like mentioned something about a podcast in passing at Peabody TV, and I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Text me, I'll come and do it.
Yeah.
Thinking that she was asking if I wanted to be on her podcast.
Oh, gotcha.
And so when I hit her up to be like, oh, hey, sorry, I was in such a bad mood that night, but like, yeah, I'm definitely down. Let me know. And she was like, no, I want to produce you should have a podcast.
Oh, that's so
and I'll produce
fierce.
it for you.
So
and
this totally went like over your head at first.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
And like, I'm obsessed with podcasts. I love listening to like I'm a podcast junkie. Like if I'm alone in my car, 9 times out of 10, I'm listening to an audiobook or a podcast.
I love that.
We're in drag. We're constantly listening to music, like for work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I love music, but it's sometimes I just need like something more.
Yeah, I agree.
Informational, relaxing.
Yeah. Versus rather than a podcast like in the car on Spotify, I usually listen to music in the car, but then when I'm home, I'd love to throw on YouTube, watch like just
a little
like
background cleaning noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
With Trixie and Katya, like love that, love them. And, that's kind of
That's what like got me into them because I don't really watch Drag Race. And I kept seeing like clips of their podcast because I like podcasts. And I was like, who are these people? And I was like, oh, okay, Drag Race. But they're funny. And
they are, yeah. That before I even knew anything about Drag Race, one of my friends back when I was in college, literally in my dorm room, was like, oh, have you ever seen And I was like, fucking what? But yeah, and she showed it to me. And that's kind of when I... maybe without knowing it back then, that's when I really started to like dive more into queer culture and drag. Like I feel like I really was able to learn so much more about myself, and then now in turn also be inspired to do a podcast about like what goes on behind the scenes, because there's so much cool shit that goes on backstage.
So much cool shit that goes on.
Absolutely.
Well, what about you? Tell me what is your queer origin story and your drag origin story?
Yeah, honestly,
who is Bossy Boots? Where did she come from?
You know what? This is a great time for me to talk about myself. I haven't really done that on this podcast.
That's what we're crossover episode, baby. I'm interviewing you right back.
Oh my goodness. I think in terms of like my queer journey, when I first came out in high school, but I don't think that I really had like a queer awakening and like discovering more about like queer arts and culture until I was like well into college. Like I didn't know anything about drag or like performing arts and nightlife really until I was like 20 or 21. So I was a late bloomer in that regard.
Well, I mean, that's 20-year-olds are barely being able to get into clubs anyway.
That's true.
And I think that's a lot of frustration for like young queer adults, where it's like everything that's happening in gay culture is like at nighttime. And there's a lot less of that now than like maybe in the last like 10 to 20 years, like
absolutely
of our generation growing up.
Love a matinee show.
Love a matinee. Love a brunch.
Love a brunch.
Love a brunch.
Yep. Absolutely. But I think continuing on, I think that what really inspired me like once I started doing drag was honestly just the people that I was surrounding myself with, like my drag family, my drag mother, Lily Rose Valor, who was just on this podcast.
Love
And
Lily Rose
for those of you who are watching, I did just record that too about 20 minutes ago. So I'm doing a double duty today. So when this episode comes out, it'll be much after the fact.
Just like me to get the sloppy seconds, but I'll take what I can get.
You know, I would love to hear, like, you know, since starting the podcast too, obviously we both are exploring different topics. Have you been given more insight or perspective on like different topics or vulnerabilities or like things that you hadn't really seen from like a different side, like somebody else's point of view before?
Yeah. So on Buster's Beat, I don't like specifically focus on just drag.
Yeah.
So on the show, I've had comedians, a tattoo artist, someone who works in the theater.
Fierce.
You know, I'm going to have a photographer on soon. And like,
That's
I'm
so
just
cool.
diving into all these other, like, these are all queer people who've like either like discovered their art or discovered their art through their queerness or discovered their queerness through their art. And just so much of these worlds are completely different. And yet we all experience a lot of the same things because we all are still in that queer family.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a lot of fun to see the overlap in that, while also being able to learn so much about like all these different industries where I'm like, I'm surrounded by all these people who I know do it, but like now I know the little ins and outs of their worlds as well.
Well, I guess that's a little different than what I talk about on this podcast as well, because I do specifically focus on like the backstage side of drag productions, but there's still a lot of facets that go into that. Like there's people who do theatrical drag, there's people who do live singing, people who mostly dance. There's also people that I'm going to have on here that are like managers for the clubs that we know in Boston.
Ooh.
And, you know, people who maybe wouldn't normally have the spotlight. Like I'm going to have some DJs on here. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up for the Chicken Coop.
Sounds
But,
like
yeah,
it.
honestly. What are some other like confidence boosts that maybe you've had since starting your podcast? Like has it attributed better to like any hosting abilities, or maybe if you haven't even noticed or thought about it yet?
Well, just having Randall approach me to be like, I think you should have a podcast was a big boost.
That's fierce.
'Cause, like it was always kind of a fantasy of like, oh, well, I love podcasts and I'm really into them, but like I don't know what it would be about. So until someone like gave me the assignment of like, you can have a podcast about whatever you want, then that kind of launched like, okay, what do I want it to be about?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then going from there, like as soon as the first episode came out, so many people came out of the woodwork to be like, you're really good at this. And I was like, oh, am I?
Am I?
Yeah. And then I often get the comment of like, oh, you have a good voice for podcasts. And I was like, oh no, is that like having a face for radio? Like,
like, is this a read? Yeah.
is this a good thing? But yeah, so that's all about like so much of it has been like a positive response.
Yeah.
And then like a lot of people who, you know, are interested in drag, but also operate in like theater or comedy or visual arts who are like, oh, like this is something I can relate to. And like they discover, you know, the overlap that's in our world doing drag.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I really think that drag has such a unique perspective that we do have a lot of that layover and overlap with like different industries. Like, and so many people don't even realize it either, like how much could go into drag itself. It's like, yeah, we do theater, we do acting, we do dancing. We don't just like lip sync to a song most of the time. There's other moving parts. Like there's artistic sides of it that really make it that much more unique and special, that it is a big culmination of things that you honestly may not even expect. So
yeah, I always like to think of it as like when people are like, oh, I want to do that. That looks easy. And I'm just like, I guess I'm doing my job right if like all the work that I've put into this means that it looks easy.
No, literally. Yeah. I would love for someone to come up to me and be like, wow, what you do looks so difficult. Like,
yeah,
like
you look like you really put a lot of effort in.
Yeah,
like, I did.
Yeah, I know. Like, I feel like I never get that compliment. Whenever someone's like, oh wow, you're like made to do this. Like, it just comes so natural. I'm like, does it?
I'm glad it looks that way.
Yeah, painting for hours sounds totally natural to me.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And like all the work that goes into like just producing like a live show of like putting out a casting call, making the lists of people, reaching out to them, doing the group chat.
Yeah,
we've both been in both ends of that where it's just like the necessary evil of like, I'm going to start this and then I'm going to get mad every time I hear my phone go off.
Honestly. Well, I guess that sort of leads me into my next topic too, is that, not only are you like in the greater Boston area, but specifically you also produce shows in Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you want to talk about really cool drag, Salem, Massachusetts, people, has some of the best fucking drag I've ever seen.
You heard it here.
Yeah. And what is it like having a regularly recurring show that celebrates kings and things? Because that's something that's really, really important, is that sort of visibility for not just drag queens and beautiful women such as myself.
Well, I always start off shows with being like, I love queens. I respect queens. I would not be where I am today without queens uplifting me and giving me space and power. But yeah, I love doing the king and thing fling because especially in Salem, there's a huge king and thing scene. Like we're actually one of the few towns where like we outnumber the queens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And up until, this last year or two of me producing shows, even though the kings are outnumbering the queens, like local producers, like honestly, until Diamond came around and started hiring kings more regularly, a lot of people would hire queens from out of town to be like, well, we got to fill up these shows. And like, we obviously can't source like local kings and there's only so many queens. So,
yeah.
And like, I mean, everyone should be able to perform everywhere all the time, but it's like, well, why did it take so long? And a lot of like my origin story doing drag was like in the burlesque scene, because that's really the only place you could get booked as a drag king, of being like, well, I have a body that's traditionally being seen under this gaze, so like how gay can I make burlesque before they're like, this is drag.
Yeah.
Which
honestly,
is, I mean, fine. The scenes cross over enough that
absolutely.
it wasn't a problem.
But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is something that I personally see. I feel like Salem has less of a problem with this versus other cities, even in the nearing surrounding areas. Like being a drag king, I feel like it's a much better, like you had mentioned now, and probably, again, like the kings and things outnumber the queens. Do you notice a difference between like Salem and other cities, like when it comes to getting bookings? Oh yeah. Yup, I knew it. Yup.
Yes, I do notice that sometimes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's I don't know, it just grinds my gears. I love my kings and things. I do. I love booking them because having diversity in a show is important. People want to see all walks of drag.
Yeah.
They do. I think I won't dive too deep into it, but I think it's ridiculous.
We know.
Yeah.
We see.
Absolutely.
We see the lineups.
Totally.
We know what's going on out there.
Continuing on with what you do like in the Salem scene, you've also gotten to work with the Peabody SX Museum, and you've created genuine works of queer history. Like, what does that feel like, being able to do all of that?
It makes me feel really, really, really cool.
Yeah.
I owe like the Peabody SX Museum so much, like getting to work with them so much in this last year, because this last Pride we had that huge show.
Yes.
We had Landon Cider, we had all the hometown queeros. It was huge. There was like 400 plus people like packed into that atrium. The lighting, the photography, I felt like a rock star. It was just like cloud nine.
That's
to the
so
point where like
cool.
the next day we were all texting each other like, none of us have any serotonin left. I've got the blue. And that's like why we all went on vacation together afterwards. We were like, we all just need to like, it's okay. We had a good time. But like definitely the end of Pride blues hit hard after doing a show that was like that incredible. But leading up to that, Maxine and I ended up doing a gender euphoria workshop for young adults.
Yes.
With partnership with the Peabody Essex Museum and NAGLY.
Yep.
So basically we would go in every week during Pride and like have a sit down with them to be like, hey, whether it's drag or just how you want to live your life in gender expression, like here's all the different ways we can play in that. So like week to week, we would have these like different sessions, and it culminated at anyone who wanted to perform we got to have like a little mini staged moment for the kids who wanted to like dip their toe into doing drag, like at the Peabody Essex Museum.
That's so fucking cool.
And it was such like a proud dad moment, because like I have drag sons and I'm a very deadbeat father, as we all know, but I still feel proud when I see them get on stage and like do their thing and own it. Because like if I can impart any wisdom onto anyone else doing drag, is like just own what you're doing, because 9 times out of 10, if somebody's complimenting me, it's usually like, you look like you're having so much fun. How do I do that? And I'm like, I just naturally am having fun. I can't, if you don't like being on stage, then like, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's, you and Harlow could definitely relate on that in terms of like being a drag parent, is that, you know, Harlow would always tell me too. She'd be like, you know, whenever you go into these spaces, just own it and like be proud of what you do. Yeah. And I think that is such an important and strong message when you're going into any show, any venue, even just like going out in face. Yeah. I think is important to just own who you are and really love and celebrate that. So.
I think a great way to practice is get a really weird hat.
Get a really weird hat?
Get a really weird hat that you just love, but you're like afraid to wear out, and then just wear it out one night and like just sit with the awkwardness. You know, if you're like too afraid to go out and drag, or, you know, that's like the best, because some people just like don't have what it takes to wear a weird hat out in public. Yeah. I'm like, if you can't wear the weird hat, how are you going to get on stage in drag and like, I don't, it's.
You know what? You make a good point there.
Wear a weird hat. Try the weird hat.
Yeah.
Or wear the weird makeup. You know, you see the tutorial and you're like, I could never do it. Go to the grocery store.
Or wear the weird wig.
Wear the weird wig.
You know?
That's a wig.
Oh my goodness. I think that's really, really great. And I also have to ask, continuing on of, you know, all the amazing things that go on in Salem, there are also 2 other people that I want to shout out. The hostess of Yas Talk right here on Peabody TV as
Another
well.
fine Peabody TV production.
Yep. Ms. Diamond Wigfall, and the winner of Cycle 8 of the Boston Drag Gauntlet, Miss Maxine Harrison. She kicked my ass. It's great.
My wife and my stepdaughter.
What is it like getting to do so much with them? Because I wish that I could work more with them, because I'm just in Lowell, you know? Like, it's different for me. I'm not right next door. Like, you've had so many opportunities to work with the 2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, we're very like... our drag family just kind of very naturally fell in together. Like the Hometown Queeros, like we're a collective in the sense of like we're all individual artists.
Yes.
But we all just like working together so much that we kind of have like these set things that we know we can count on each other to do, like Big Day Night Out and the Shadowcast productions and things like that.
Absolutely.
But Diamond and I, our origin story was Kane of New York. We did burlesque together, and there was a show that Miss Diamond was throwing in Salem while she was still living in New York, and they needed an extra person, and they were like, oh my God, you should do that, because like what you do is pretty much drag. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess so.
Yeah, you crossed that threshold that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. It's like, well, I'm getting naked, but like I also have a mustache on, and like,
close enough.
Close enough. So yeah, that's when we met, and then she just like kept booking me after that, and I ended up like going out to New York, and we never really got to hang out because it was always shows.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, which forced her back to Salem.
Yeah.
Which also forced me back to Salem at the same time.
Oh, no kidding.
So that just, we kind of fell into being like, oh, remember how we worked together? Like that was really great. And then we worked together for a while at a dispensary, which wasn't as great. I mean, working together was great, but the experience itself was a little.
Well,
we won't name names, but they know who they are. So yeah, we just like it's a very natural collaboration. And she had like a very similar sort of path. I mean, not of the same shows, but like fell in with Maxine, who was best friends with Miss Michael. And like I also used to work with Dick, and like Dick went to school with Pee Wee, and like we all just kind of fell in on each other.
That's so cool.
Which was nice. Like, and it's a very natural thing, because sometimes like I've been in like troops, which like is good, but after a while it's like, well, we have to do this it's like being in a band.
Yeah.
Where it's like the tensions build because you can't just walk away. And I think the Hometown Queeros is like a really good collective, because nobody's in, nobody's out, like there's no dues, there's no blood, there's just like we all just hang out, and
you know what?
Happens.
I think that is a very good definition of what we could actually call like a good community with drag.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really good definition for that, because And I think it also makes the shows better too.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh my goodness, all your favorite performers from all around town are going to be at this one show. I think it makes it that much more special, especially when you have that collective of like, oh yeah, we do shows together, but also like we have our own separate things and like we support each other through those, like sharing stories and whatever. Like I think it's a very, very clear-cut collective that y'all have, and it's honestly beautiful to see. I wish there was more of it. I do. So.
We try, yeah. And like I think it's all very important to us. Like we do a lot of stuff together, but we also know not to like oversaturate our own like community. So like we have Big Gay Night Out, and we have the Shadow Cast, but like whenever we produce all of our own shows, they're all very different concepts, very different times. Like if there is overlap, like the concepts are so different that it's like, I'd rather there be too much to do, too much gay stuff going on on a Saturday night than like, oh, everyone has to come to my show.
Yeah,
I'm like, no, if you can go to 3 different shows in one night, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love bar hopping, love show hopping. Like I've had some of the most fun experiences being like, okay, we're going to start here. We're going to go to Jacques at 8. Then we're going to go to Blend and see Harlow and Lily at midnight, you know, like being able to do that. And
the whole journey through town.
Yeah, literally. Messy nights out. Love it.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really, really cool to do is, you know, have that acknowledgement of like, you know what, whoever's going to want to come here will come here, and whoever wants to go there will go there. I think that's a very respectful take to have too.
Yeah, we're all just very conscientious, and you know, we're all just trying to have a good time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I think that's all I got for today. But Buster, thank you for coming on to the Chicken Coop today.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on Buster's Beat. This is obviously my podcast.
Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Venmo at PantsBuster. That's Buster Pants is my name, so just flip them around, because if you look up at Buster Pants, that is somebody's dog. And that dog has not posted since 2014.
That is so unfortunate.
So I think that dog is dead. If he's not, it's not good.
Well,
too old.
Well, you heard it here first. Follow Buster Pants at PantsBuster, not at Buster Pants. Oh my goodness.
And yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing this little crossover collaboration.
Of course.
Crossing the streams.
Absolutely. I love getting to, chat with just like other co-workers, essentially, being able to get different perspectives and breathe some new life and some new air into everything every day. So,
well, before we sign off, my one last thing for you.
Oh.
If you could offer new producers in the scene, or people who want to produce their own shows.
Ooh, okay.
What's the advice that you would offer them? Like bullet points in a nutshell, either like one strong point or a few small things. Like if someone's like, man, I really want to produce a show, what would you kind of shake them by the shoulders and say?
All right, you're going to get the Bossy Boots perspective. Here we go. I'm going to keep it real simple. 3 points. 1, slim your concept down. Try to keep it to one thing. Don't do too much in one show. Try to just keep it one clear-cut concept and lean the fuck into it.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah, don't overthink it. 2, you need to have your shit together. Like, you need to be organized. Like, whatever way you want to do it, whether it's with a spreadsheet or like just writing down notes, pen and paper, you need to make sure that you are organized and going in. And 3, you should also be confident that whatever you're doing will bring value to yourself, to whoever you cast, and for the venue that you're hosting it at. And keeping it diverse is super, super important too. I think that's something to keep in mind as well. Having, whatever you want to do, having everything and everyone represented in your shows is super important. So, and yeah, that's the Bossy Boots key to success. So
excellent.
Take that as you will. Don't come for my gig, whoever's listening to this. Well, you can find me pretty much anywhere, once again, at Bossy Boots on Instagram and beyond. That is Bossi Boots, as in the shoe. And you've been listening to The Chicken Coop, your backstage pass into the ever-changing world of drag production. Goodbye, chicken.